there's a lot of different ways of thinking about community. You can, and they can be small or large, but really, it's community is a choice, right? Like it's a choice. It's an accountability. It's a responsibility. Because if you're in community, then then what you're saying is community matters, and that means whoever you identify as your community. And you can be a part of different communities. I'm a part of different communities. I'm a part of a poetry community. I'm a part of a movement community. I'm a part of the Black community here. And so like I'm a part of different communities. But it's a choice, and if you make that choice, you're accountable, and you're also responsible for what you do and how you move in it.
The amazing and wonderful Dasan Ahanu.
Yeah.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right.
I paused like that because I remember thinking back that I used to always say your name wrong. I used to always pronounce it wrong, so I was like, maybe I should. And when I started to, kind of do my research on you and all the things that I do, I looked up the name because I was curious as to why was that the chosen name for you? And what I found was that Ahanu means he laughs. Or Dasan Ahanu means he laughs. Did you know that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So does that have a connection as to why you chose that name?
Well, there's two parts to it. So Ahanu is he laughs, or someone who laughs, and Dasan is ruler. And so my interpretation, the way that the meaning is someone who commands with a sense of humor. Dasan was chosen first. That was the first time that I signed up to go, to get on the open mic list. I signed Dasan, and then I chose Ahanu shortly after, and then it became Dasan Ahanu. But I chose them for the meaning, because I felt like that sort of gave a glimpse into me, but also kind of empowered me to actually start sharing my poems, which I was very, very concerned about doing. So, yeah.
So what, I know right now you have throughout your life, you you center a lot of the things that you do as far as, your voice in the community, mainly around the idea of the disenfranchised community, and social injustices and rights for the minority or disenfranchised people. So my question for you is kind of how you transition into that, and how does it relate to your mission overall?
Well, it's for me, they're tandem, and partly because of the way everything happened. So I started going to an open mic. The open mic was very, diasporic and Afrocentric in nature. The models that the folks who ran it, they did a weekly open mic and a monthly event, were models from around the country, from up north, in New York, from down in Atlanta, Funk Jazz Cafe. So they had these bohemian kind of Afrocentric models that they were using. The open mic was in a Jamaican club that was privately owned. And so, like, all of that was just the environment that I got nurtured in. And then at the same time, there were elders in the community who were looking for young folks to get involved in social justice work and community organizing. So I started by being out at arts events, getting introduced to, and I met and started kind of getting invited out with my peers to start being more involved in the community. So my journey, it all kind of, came together. So for me, it's all together. My models, me learning that there was a larger poetry scene, that there was venues across the country me diving deeper into an understanding of movements in poetry, the Black arts movement, and all these things. All these things came all at the same time, and it was a combination of my own research, because I was like fascinated by what I was introduced to, and these folks that I had around me who were seeing what I was doing and were like, well, do you know about this? Or do you know about that? Or have you ever read this? And so that's why in my journey, my intent all along that I believe was to figure out what it meant to blend all that together. And ultimately what that ended up doing was a shift from me being heavily involved in organizing work and being an artist, to me being an artist who organizes and holds space in a particular way, and also lends myself to movement building and community work that is going on. So I shifted my base while maintaining my commitment. But it's just I say that I got raised in community. So like I got raised by my folks, but then I stepped out into the community, and I got raised in community, and that's sort of my frame of reference.
Yeah. How do you define community in the sense of building that sort of dynamic that you were able to benefit from in that way, and kind of bringing all those pieces together? What's the ideal definition of community in that sense?
Well, it depends. I mean, it's really one of the things that about community, and this is a good question because this is a big deal for me, is community. There's a lot of different ways of thinking about community. You can, and they can be small or large, but really, it's community is a choice, right? Like it's a choice. It's an accountability. It's a responsibility. Because if you're in community, then then what you're saying is community matters, and that means whoever you identify as your community. And you can be a part of different communities. I'm a part of different communities. I'm a part of a poetry community. I'm a part of a movement community. I'm a part of the Black community here. And so like I'm a part of different communities. But it's a choice, and if you make that choice, you're accountable, and you're also responsible for what you do and how you move in it. And so that's the big thing. I don't believe that you are inherently a part of a community. That may be controversial for some folks, but if I don't choose to be a part of it, it doesn't matter how you see me. What matters is how I choose to show up. And so, and I think that lends itself to a lot of times where there's tension, because folks have an expectation. Oh, we in community. Well, is that person operating as if they in community? Because if not, then y'all ain't in community with that person.
Right,
That's not what it is. That person has to, the way that I think about what a community is, a neighborhood is a community, and the way that folks talk about what neighborhood is that everyone understands that they are a part of it, and they're actively participating in it. So it's a choice. You don't just wake up and be in community. We can wake up in the same place.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can exist in the same skin. That don't make us community.
Right.
Unless you choose to be. And so that's the big thing for me.
So how do you feel like, because, okay, what you were saying too, there's like kind of sort of these pockets of community, and we talked about this a little bit before, where there's these sort of pockets of community, right? Where, like you were saying, we belong in different ones. And sometimes it can go, in my mind, it can go kind of both ways. It can kind of become cliquish, right? Or it can become a network sort of that extends, right? And connected in some kind of way. So my question is, how do you feel like we can safely move about having those pockets, but making sure they're all still interconnected, so we're not in this place where it becomes sort of cliquish, where you can't sit with us kind of thing? What's your views about that?
Yeah, I don't worry about any of that. And here's the reason why. No, here's the reason why. Here's the reason why. Because there are cliques.
Yeah.
And there are networks. And there's a scene. None of that means community. right? Like that none of that means community, because those folks in those cliques don't want to rock with you. So they ain't community with you just because they do what you do or in the same space as you. If you and you can be on the scene with folks and they don't move like community, so they ain't community. And you can have folks in your network that are going to be across a variety of communities, which is what make the network viable, right? Like, you're in places I'm not, I might have connections that you don't, but we're connected. And if that person chooses to be in community with me, and then there's, in community, how close we are, because I've got folks who are in my community that I love and I support, but also in that community, I got family. Like chosen family, I got blood family, I got blood family that ain't. I got blood family that ain't community.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I love them, but they aren't active in the ways that I'm active and in the spaces I'm active, and we might not even agree. So they my folks. They're my family. I love them, but they're not operating in community with me.
Right.
So I don't worry about that, because for me, community is first. So I rock with the folks I'm in community with first. But all of that is real. Like, I have sat and watched folks really be hurt and harmed by cliques. I don't pay no mind, because community has held me down. And so I say that to say I've also watched folks find themselves in an issue with a clique, leave out the clique, and then find themselves thriving because community was waiting for them. They just had to find it. And I've seen people be on a scene and find themselves. And I've had these conversations. I just had this conversation with someone, navigating the scene and judging their success and what they should be doing by the scene. Get over it, or have somebody reach out to them and open them up to an opportunity, and in doing so, come to find out what the community's view of their work and the value of their work is. And the minute that you can get on the outside of that and look back, you're like, oh, like, that's not what it is for me. This is what it is for me. And then when we do that, there's other folks who will make choices to come rock with us and join our community. So I don't worry about that, because I've been cool with cliques, but the community has given me way more opportunities than the cliques have. And I'm a part of a poetry scene across the country, but it's the folks who choose to be in community who, like, provide me with information, who mention my name in certain rooms and spaces. Like, that's how it's been. So I don't worry about that. I know it exists, and it is very all real and tangible, but I try to stay community minded, because community has held me down.
Yeah. So when it comes to having your, those kind of connections that you're able to make for someone that is, because I always try to use this platform, obviously, as a way for people to kind of learn from the artists who are, doing their things, right? And so what do you see a person that's kind of starting to want to build that community or be a part of a community, where's the door for them?
And I'm glad you asked that question, because it goes back to the question you asked previously. Because a lot of times what happens is we move in spaces that are visible to us. And that is how we are sometimes run into cliques. And we run in, and the other thing that we understand, because it's a common word used, is networking. So, they supposed to tell you to network, get out and meet people. And as an introvert, someone who's very private, and what I've learned, because I have a lot of socialites who, around me who just move, and they meet all kinds of, they're never in a place where they can't make a friend. That's beautiful. But what I learned from both experiences is I've seen folks make connections at a grocery store, at a bar, or at a restaurant, or waiting outside in line for a play. You don't have to be in particular spaces. It's a matter of opening yourself up to the possibility and just letting energy work, because you never know who's around you. Right. And folks will gravitate to you because, an interesting shirt or You know what I'm saying? You just have so many folks end up talking to me because it's just, you just seem like a person I can talk to.
Right.
So, like, once again, if you move in a certain way, I also, as an introvert, so like I'm not a socialite, so I'm not out and about. Like, I love to be out and experience things, but like I can also be out and experience things real quiet. But still, I've been able to make connections, and that's because I seek experiences that aren't where everybody else is supposed to be. Like, I follow my interests or my curiosity. And most of the things that have been opened up to me and that have deepened my place in community has been because I've gone to this talk or this art thing or this thing over here, as opposed to just going to the spaces that have been designated for poetry or for art. Like, because my goal is not, it's, and I don't want to sound harsh, but like, my goal is my art, right? Like, I'm an adult. I can figure out socializing,
Yeah.
and I know that there are places to socialize. Like, poetry spots are just like the club. If you want to go to the club, you know where the club is, and you know where the hot club is because everybody talks about it.
Yeah.
Right? But if I don't want to go to the club, that requires work. I got to look for other things. Where is a jazz thing? Where there might be an art exhibit? Where is the comedy? Like, you got to look. Same thing, right? Art is all over, but if it's about art and art experiences and making connections, then I got to look for where art is.
Yeah. So what's another, that just makes me think, what's another interest of yours that maybe we don't know that you have, or that you're discovering, or that you are curious about when it comes to expanding yourself as an artist?
Oh man,
something that maybe you haven't done yet.
Well, haven't done yet is what's on my mind. Is I have a couple of visual art ideas that I haven't explored.
Okay.
But I've tried some of everything over the years. I mean, and also just as a child, because I was one of them hyperactive kids, so I got moved into accelerated programs, and of course they keep you active. So I used to sketch and doodle. I was big into comic books, and I've tried a lot of different things over my time. Audio editing and audio engineering and the production. I'm a recording artist. I've tried my hand at freelance journalism. I've tried a lot of things, but the thing that I want to, I'm in a place, and I was talking about this with someone I met. Once again, one of them conversations you just start having with someone, and we were just talking about art, and I said I want to be active with my hands. And so, and I was the kind of kid who loved to put stuff together, and so I'm looking for more things to do. Writing is always a beautiful thing, but like I want to do more things with my hands. So, visual art's on my mind. So that over the next year, I have some ideas, and I've there's some people that I've seen who've been really doing some really cool things that they've come up with and projects they've worked on that are like mixed media. And I think that may be where I'm going, is to do some mixed media stuff. Because I'm not trying to like paint, like that is a beautiful craft, but me immersing myself in something that takes as much of me as my main art form does is not what I'm doing. Not what I'm looking to do.
Right.
But I want room to play, and I think mixed media is where I'm going.
Cool. So, first of all, congratulations on becoming the Piedmont Poet Laureate. That's super dope.
Yeah.
So more flowers to you. You got a book as well coming out. We'll talk about that.
Okay.
But I wanted to talk about because you are, one of the legends, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like poetry has kind of gone into a space where it's getting looked at differently.
Yeah.
And so I want your opinion on, what do you think is the next step for poetry? Like, what's not being done yet?
The door is open. I think, and mainly because of millennials and younger, that we're going to see a lot of new things and a lot of mashups. Of course, there's a new Grammy category for spoken word albums, which means we're going to see a lot more folks experimenting with poetry and sound, live music, digital production, there's just going to be a lot of interesting things. But also, I've been in a couple conversations, and I think what's also we're going to see is just having a separate Grammy category is going to open poets up to other things within the music recording world, because there's songwriting, there's movie scores. Like, I think folks being in the booth and in the studio, is going to connect them. Once again, it's a network. Are going to put them in touch with producers and engineers, and they're going to build relationships where they're going to be able to work on other projects. I also think we're seeing more and more involvement of poets in theater, and it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. We haven't really explored TV. There's been shows that represent, the events we do in the community on screen. Variety of different things, all the way from Def Jam through, Verses and Flow. But, I think we're going to start to see some poets in writers' rooms. And there are some who've written for other shows, but are going to start to represent the poetry, with the poetry community as the basis for a show. We saw Brandon Leak win AGT. I think we're going to see. I wouldn't be surprised to see a poet in a reality TV show. I think we're gonna. It's bound to happen, or someone to take the leap and pitch something based around poetry as a reality TV show. Because I think there's merit to it. Yeah. And I know some poets who will give you all you want. In terms of everything you get on these other ones. I know some poets who will give you all you want. Yeah,
that'd be dope.
So I think we're going to see the integration into other forms as we move forward. Just as folks try new things, and I remember there was I can't remember the name right now, but there was this beautiful faith-based poetry tour that everyone was checking out.
Something in Autumn.
Yeah. I know
some Poets in Autumn.
And I think we're gonna, just being able to see that kind of tour get pulled off. Yeah. I think it won't be, there'll be some other kinds of things like that. I think there's some possibilities, but that are gonna come down the pipe.
So with poetry now, you have these two kind of, I don't want to say sides, but two elements of poetry, or there's several, but speaking of what you were saying, how we can take it, but there's slam poet, right? And then spoken word, and then I guess the written word, I guess should be one too. Do you think there's a difference as to how that creative expression is perhaps not altered, but maybe conveyed to other people, far as how they are expressing themselves, like spoken word versus slam, or spoken word versus a poet, is there differences?
Yeah, they are.
And does it add to, or you feel like it takes away, or how can someone kind of find their way within those?
It's a choice, because when you're on page, that's you and the poem, and ultimately, what happens is you submit it to be published, whether it's in a book or in a journal, anthology, what have you, and then the poem has its own relationship with the reader down the road, and your playground is different because you've got a blank page and you can do whatever you want with the poem on the page depending on what you're trying to accomplish, and that's your playground. When you go to spoken word, so I always teach the spoken word is the intersection of the written literary art and a performance art. Your playground is different. Your playground is a stage and an audience. So what you decide to do with the poem, now it can be the same poem. It can be, it cannot be. But spoken word, spoken word is not a type of poem. I'll die on that hill. And there are folks, who are making the movement to say that it is. It's not a type of poem. It's what you do with the poem. The playground is different. Why I say it's a literary art and a performance art is that what you do with the playground comes from a place. Once you've written the poem, what you decide to do with it in spoken word is performance, right? And there are performance movements that you borrow from that lend to you deciding what you want to do with the poem. That playground is different. So yeah, there are differences. It can be you can end up with two versions of the same poem, right? And not on page. It could start with the same poem on page, right? But here's the thing about it. Like when I write the poem that gets submitted to be published may be written a certain way. Where my line breaks and my stanza breaks and where I put stuff on the page is about how I want you to experience that poem on page. When I decide to perform it, there may be words that get said on stage that aren't on that page, but they're necessary for my performance. There are things I do, and the way that I say it is about that performance. And so when you get to slam, the thing about slam is that when you're spoken word in general is a relationship between you and the audience. It's a conversation. It's a moment. Much like comedy, much like, vocalists, much like MCs, like everyone who takes the stage is a moment. In slam, it's you have to think about the audience because you're now giving the audience the ability to score. And so when you talk about spoken word in general, it's a relaxed moment. There's a conversation that happens. When you're talking about slam, there's not really a conversation because I'm not scoring you in a conversation. It's a presentation.
So I always see slam as very, from just bird's eye view, because I don't obviously do anything slam related myself. Never, probably will. But when it comes down to when I see it, it just looks very competitive, and I think people view it as this competitive nature. But from kind of the perspective that you're telling me, it's more of a presentation of skill and delivery and those kinds of things in a sense of inviting the audience in to be a part of it. Is that more? It is.
Yeah. It's also a competition. It is, okay. Because it's about how well you're able to do it.
Okay.
But because the audience gets to tell you immediately whether you've done it well or not. And so much so that you can have the best poem and not get the best score because what's being judged is not the poem. It's about the moment that you create, the presentation, and your ability to have drawn them into it. So you could have the best poem, but everything that you did not come across the best. And so that's the thing about that. Some people love it and some people hate it. I love it because I feel like that any moment I really want to test that dynamic with me in a crowd and my poem in the mix of other poems, then I can do that. Much in the way that comedians work material. And so for me, it's a process. It's like open mic, slam, and that puts me in a position to understand how a poem would work in a feature set. Just the same thing. That poem is going through the gambit, and I know where it is. Now, every poem I slam doesn't go into a feature set because that moment is a conversation. And I'm not going, there has to be ebbs and flows in a conversation.
Right.
It can't all be hype. And if it's hype, it's for a short period of time. So if I got 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, I want ebbs and flows. But when it's time to ebb, I want my ebbs to work. So it's got to go through the gauntlet. You know what I'm saying? And so, but that's the thing. But there is a page and stage. But this idea that that there are different types, because there are people who believe that you have slam poems, and it's not a slam poem. It's a slam poem because you slam it, but it's not a genre of poem. It's still a poem. It's just what the decisions you made before you decide to step on stage with it made it into what we get to hear.
Yeah.
But when you started writing a poem like you did everything else. Like it's the destination. We confuse the destination with the place it starts. And I'm okay with a poem being called a slam poem as long as we don't get caught up in the idea of you trying to use that to say that where I started is not where you started because yours is in a book. We're not playing that game.
Yeah.
Where it ended up is different, but where it started was the same. We sat down somewhere and used our skill set to write a poem. Let's not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you're into a lot of workshops and teacher roles or educator roles, speaker roles. And one thing I've been wanting to really kind of pick the brain of leaders' mind in that sense is mentorship when it comes down to bringing in young, particularly men, African-American men in the community, because a lot of men are taking on those roles, in addition to women too, but it being, mental health awareness for men and wanting to kind of center around that topic. Do you feel like there's something missing? Because I just feel like there's not, I don't know if it's not a highlight on that enough. I had spoke with SP, the writer, in my last interview, and, in asking the same question. And so I'm just curious to hear from you, someone that's kind of immersed in that role of mentorship, of workshops, of the educator element of it. What is your thoughts on why, my vantage point now, very growing vantage point. I won't say narrow, but very growing vantage point when it comes down to what I see. Do you feel like that those roles of mentoring young men, young writers, is there and not being highlighted? Do you feel like there's a missing piece? Do you feel like there's more we could be doing? What's your stance on something like developing that more in the community?
We'll see. It goes back to what we said before.
Yeah.
It starts by shifting people's mindsets, because if you're focused on these particular places and you're seeing clicks and you're seeing all of these things that you're trying to figure out what your relationship with them are, then more than likely what you're not getting is mentorship. Because your mentors aren't there, right? Like there may be mentors in those spaces, but you might be the 10th person that walked into that space, and a person can only actively mentor so many folks. You can model and you can passively mentor, which like you can be an example for folks, and you can pass on information and wisdom. But there's levels to mentorship, and being able to get close enough to a person for them to really be active in what you're doing, and for you to really be able to get hold of them. Then if you're looking at 5 spaces and there's 2 in each, then there's 10 across that. And if you're the 105th person to walk into that space, your mentor's not there. What you have is now mind you, I just mentioned 10 people. There's more than 10 people in each one of those places. So there are lots of examples of lots of things to do. And more of them than there are of the folks you'd be paying attention to. So, but if you're able to expand your scope and really get out and find community, then where you'll find mentors, right? And so I think part of it is that and people's perception of it shifts. So like in the community, I think there's a lot of activity and a lot of conversation around how to be available for young black, especially black male artists, young black men. I think women do a better job of it, sometimes out of necessity and survival, because there's so much they have to navigate, that they are in position to make sure that they can help their folks not get caught up. Patriarchy kind of keeps men from doing the same thing when they need it just as much, because some of the same pitfalls, and like there's still pitfalls and challenges. But I think there's more of a conversation as we watch and lose folks and see them stumble and have like, I think there's more of a conversation at large. But that doesn't mean that in these particular places that conversation is being centered. And a lot of times, to be completely honest, is because there are folks inside of those spaces who don't want to be held accountable. So that conversation is not there. But it's happening. So when you when you get yourself out in the community, you'll find your folks. And in these days and times, the idea of having that one mentor, which is, I believe has shifted, but you can find your counsel is what I would recommend folks to look for. Who's on your counsel? Who your 4 or 5 folks? One may be a poet, but like the scope of what you want and what you aspire to do with yourself and your art and what matters to you requires more of a counsel than a person. Because that person can only guide you in the way that they know and through the people they know, but your counsel. So maybe a poet, it may be a visual artist, it may be an educator, it may be a business person for the community, but that's your counsel of folks. Like this me, you're going to find that out in community. Yeah. And that's who's going to hold you down and get down. So I think we want to shift that. And I used to talk about that with my students. When I got my freshmen, I'm like, how you move across campus is going to put you in a position. And I'm like, think about it. Because the impression you make is going to put you in a position for you to have folks across this campus who are going to look out for you. So who your folks? And you need to identify early. So by the time you're a junior and you really are looking forward, it's not just your advisor. It's not that professor that you took 2 or 3 classes with. Because honestly, you may think that should be your mentor, but that might not be the person that's going to help move you the way you need to be moved. It's the person in student activities who always has a conversation with you and asks you how what's going on with you because they see something in you. It made it, what I'm saying? Like it may be one of your elective classes where there's somebody who knows what you talked about aspiring to do, whose best friend is already working or is a director or a supervisor or an exec. Like, you never know. But those folks are invested in you as much as, because they see something in you. That's your counsel and they're going to help you move. That professor that you love and who's seen you come and shine in their class is going to help you as much as possible. But that might not be the mentor for you. That's the person you add to your network. Because they're going to always write your recommendation. They're going to be happy to hear about your successes. But in terms of being able to be invested in you, because they don't see the same thing as those other folks do. So we got to think about that. And I say that expand your scope and really think about what mentorship means. And my advice is a counsel instead of a person, a counsel.
Okay. So I want to talk about your book a little bit before we head out today. So tell everybody what the project you got going on. A phenomenal book. I haven't read it yet, but I already know it's phenomenal. Yeah. So I was hoping you would bring a copy.
Yeah,
sir.
I know.
But that's okay. That's okay. So tell us about your latest publication.
Yes. So it's a poetry chapbook. So I'm, in the midst of a series of books that I've been putting out on Black life, and there's 2 out of the 3 volumes that are already out there in the world. The first is Everything We're Fighting For, an exploration of being Black in America. The second is Shackled Freedom, Black living in the modern American South. And so, I was awarded the opportunity to be the Piedmont Laureate. And so in celebration, I said I wanted to put something out. I'm a big hip hop head, and I'm a Gemini, so I love Andre 3000. We're both Geminis. Everything he says resonates, especially in this part of his life where he's just kind of been living on his own terms, but also being very open and honest about wrestling with some of imposter syndrome, some of his convictions, some of his demons and everything. He did an interview with Rick Rubin, and I was blown away. And I started working on some poems that were about my journey and all of the things that come with being an artist, the joys, the successes, the pitfalls, the expectation, all of that. I'm inspired by him. And so what it led to me doing was I mean, some of the song titles are based on songs that he's written, and there's just this thing of like in my mind, this conversation that I was having with him as two people going through some of the same things. And so it led me to write these poems that are just about, just about what it means to try to navigate this thing. And so it's called A Brilliant, Uncertain Rebellion, because that's what I think about the way he's decided to live his life. Mm-hmm. It's uncertain, but I think it's brilliant. And I think it's a rebellion, to kind of just fight for your own, own control over everything. Mm-hmm. And so I released it. It's, I published it and put it out. And it's just to celebrate this moment. The Piedmont Laureate position was a big, just a big moment in my life and my journey. Mm-hmm. And I felt like it was a time to be vulnerable and open about all of these things. And so that's sort of what this book does. And I want it to be a way for other folks to kind of see themselves and think about their journey, mm-hmm. but also to recognize that it's still beautiful regardless of what it is. What scars, pitfalls, trips, getting back up, shifting directions, whatever it is. And also to see things in it that's like, oh, okay, yeah, I got you. I see you. I know what you're dealing with. Like, I've seen it. I've felt it. I've avoided it, or I didn't avoid it, but I know. And so I want my folks to be seen and heard. And so that's what it is. And so it fills that gap between Shackled Freedom and the last volume. Because it's like, let me have this moment with my folks. And when I say my folks, my folks can mean a lot of things. I can be talking about family, I can be talking about black folks, but in this case, my fellow artists. Let me have this moment with my artists. Then I'm going to get back to this work about talking about my folks, my black folks. Mm-hmm. So it was just an opportunity to take a break during, and celebrate this position and say, let me put this out here for me and my fellow artists. And then, you have that moment, what I'm saying? It's like, when you having a moment, you call up the homie, like, let's meet for a drink. Like, you need a moment, and then you can get back to work, and then I'm gonna get back to being about the business of my people. So, yeah,
that's dope. So, what I hear is kind of like this interplay of self-reflection. Mm-hmm. So, a lot of artists obviously experience that. So, I ask everyone the same question. Mm-hmm. I've kind of made it a pattern.
All right.
But since we're talking about your book in that sense, I'll kind of tweak it a little bit so that it highlights that. I usually ask people, what's love? But I'm going to ask you, how do you define self-love? What's your definition of self-love?
Well, that's a good question. Both of those are good questions. And, I think they're variations of the same thing. I think when you think about self-love, I think there's a commitment. And a commitment is a commitment to the truth of you. And I think that's what self-love is. It's a commitment to the truth of you. And that truth is true when it's true. Like, I'm not good right now. That's a commitment to the truth of you. And self-love is to be committed to that, to own it, and in the commitment to be, dedicated to doing something about it, whatever needs to happen. If you need space, you need time, you need to cry on somebody's shoulder, like whatever that is. And and this is extremely important to me, but when you're up, like being committed to the truth of you is that you don't hide when you up, and you don't, what I'm saying? You don't celebrate quiet. Like, you take care of you, because I'm up. I did that. Yeah. And I'm not going, I'm not going to brush by that. Right. I'm not going to be hurt loud and joyous quiet. Like, nah. Mm-hmm. So, I'm good. I'm
both.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm good. I'm good. I'll be sitting somewhere eating like I'm a king by myself because I did something. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to spend what I spend because I deserve it. Yeah. I'm going to have my moments. I'm going to walk in confidence. I'm going to, and I'm not the kind of person to, like, if I need to talk my talk, I'm going to talk my talk. But otherwise, I don't. Being committed to the truth for you is I'm not ever going to let anybody make me feel like I got to move a way that isn't true to me. Mm-hmm. So you might expect me to show up in spaces and move a certain way. No, that's not how I move. I'm committed to me and my truth. And my truth is I'm going to move how I move. That's self-love. I'm going to love myself enough to move in spaces how I move, and whatever is for me or is there intended for me is what that's going to be. I don't care how y'all do, you know? And that's also about those particular spaces where I don't bother them. The truth of me is that I was taught what community is. I know it when I see it. If that ain't it, then I ain't acting like it is. I know how to maneuver and navigate through, and I'm going to shake hands and kiss. You know, I'm going to show love. I'm going to give love, and I'm going to show respect and support. But I'm not going to act like this is community, because I know what community is. What this is this is me being out amongst folks, and we going to navigate it that way. So, like, because this ain't it for me. It might be for that person or for that person, and you know, I'll handle all of that accordingly. Encourage a person to go, you know, ask questions. You sure? Whatever. But at the end of the day, none of that has anything to do with me. I know what it is for me, and also, so like being committed to the truth of you, and to, you know, for me to love is to create space for folks to be whole. You know, like to give love is for me to create spaces for people to be who they are, and for us to figure that out together, because I feel like that deepens our relationship, whether it's, you know, whether we fam or, like, I feel like the folks that associate and rock with me know they get to be who they are whenever they're around me, and the folks who are family and like we like this feel the same, and that's just because I believe that's what it is, and then our relationship will grow and deepen from there. So
that's dope. I appreciate that answer, and I appreciate you coming on today. You guys, please make sure you follow this man, stay connected. Go ahead and tell them how they can connect with you.
Oh, yeah. I'm Dasan Ahanu across everything. I'm the only Dasan Ahanu in the world. Right now, I'm trying to keep it that way. So if y'all see anybody, any pictures that ain't my face, and you see Dasan Ahanu, let me know. I'm hitting them with the cease and desist quick, fast. But it's DasanAhanu. If you put Dasan Ahanu all together anywhere, you'll come up with the website, social media, and you'll pull up everything. I'm easy to find. And so, yeah.
Where can they buy your book? Amazon, all the places?
All the places. Books A Million, which I didn't even know was still a thing. But Books A Million is still active online. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Google Books. You also can go to your bookstores. It's available. Your books, all the bookstores, it's in the system. All the bookstores will be able to order it if you want to do it that way. I'd love it if you went to your local mom and pop bookstore and asked them to order you a copy, because it may mean that they may decide to carry a few copies in the store, but it's available anywhere you can find books. So, yeah.
Awesome. And you can find me at Jen_just_right. And you guys make sure you like, subscribe to the Poetic Just Us podcast, and we'll see you next time. Peace.